but the offer to Sir William to speak to RNZ is still open.
The National Party says the government needs to explain how it will make sure people on the dole don't exploit the increase in student allowances planned for next year. National's Tertiary Education spokesperson Paul Goldsmith says the $50 extra per week will mean students are pocketing more money than those on the jobseekers benefit, which risks opening up the system to abuse. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern joins me now in the studio. Good morning, Prime Minister.
Good morning.
Is there a chance that they could be exploiting the system?
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, there may well be an additional incentive now, perhaps, to look at training and education as an alternative to being on a job seeker benefit. But any sense that that may then lead to exploitation, I would challenge that. There are protections in place that when you are accessing assistance in our education system to ensure that there are pass rates and that you are a genuine bona fide student. And so those remain, and I believe that will provide the protections required.
So you think those protections will guard against, if you like, people jumping off job seekers and onto the student allowance?
Well, jumping off job seeker without the intention of being a genuine student, yes. But if we see a move from people moving off job seeker perhaps to going into training, keeping in mind, of course, that student allowance isn't just about tertiary education, it's about a range of training options, then that I would see that as being a good outcome. Of course, some who may well be on job seeker may need extra training and education in order to access jobs that are available. So if we do see that kind of switch, I think we'd want to encourage that.
Also watch for those coming off job seekers onto student allowance and after 1 year then dropping off again? And if you do see that, will you make some changes?
Oh, look, I think that there's probably a sense that sometimes that's happening already in our education system. We're already mindful of wanting to reduce that down from happening, and there's ways that we can do that. Broadly, I'd say the best way to prevent that is making sure the advice around the training and education courses you're taking up is really robust in the first place. The best place we can actually do that is in our school system. Better careers advice, better partnering with those in the industry training organisations to make sure we're matching people's skills and interests with their long-term education plan.
We just spoke about Sir William Gallagher, farming legend from the Waikato. He's come out saying the treaty is a fraud. Given that you're someone who grew up on a farm in the Waikato, here's the headline of the Waikato Times there. What are your thoughts about his comments there about the Treaty of Waitangi?
Quite simple, he's wrong.
Okay, so I want to talk about you recently attended the FOMA, Federation of Māori Authorities, hui, last week, and you said, I don't want us to rest until we actually have a country where Māori and non-Māori equally enjoy a shared success. That is a big ask. If we look at the big picture there, what is that? What are you meaning there? Prisons and education.
And that's exactly what I mean. It is a big ask. My view is, though, that, and this is, I know a view that's shared, that our prosperity, whether or not we succeed and fail as a nation, is equally dependent on how our neighbour is doing, how our community is doing. And I think when you look at some of the measures around educational outcomes, around health outcomes, around the proportion of Māori in our justice system, there is a lot of work to be done.
If we just look at that, 51% of the prison population, male are Māori, 64% of Māori women make up our prison system. That's a pretty big statement in terms of the expectation. Just give me one idea perhaps of how you're going to reduce that, how they're going to have shared equality. And
the examples that I gave at the conference that you mentioned were quite focused on economic development. The reason I raised social wellbeing more generally was to put emphasis on the fact that I think we have responsibility there as well. But in the economic development space, for instance, we've got some ambitious goals around regional economic development. If you're going to look at areas we need to target, they would be areas like Gisborne, Northland, Bay of Plenty, Hawke's Bay, highest levels of social deprivation, highest Māori population as well. Now, primary industries continue to be the backbone of our regional economic development, where the opportunities exist. Māori assets in primary industries are significant. They already own 30% of the land where we have forest plantations, for instance. We should be partnering with Māori, with FOMA, for instance, to leverage off that and say, well, actually, we've got opportunities to create jobs that will benefit Māori in those areas if we work together.
So you're saying the $1 billion that's going to be into regional development, there's going to be some shared success there for Māori. Would there be like 15% perhaps of the $1 billion that will go into Māori farming?
Yeah, while we haven't put a number on it, my expectation is if we're looking at the areas...
That's shared success though, isn't it?
You'd want the outcomes certainly to generate a benefit. If we're focused on the areas where we have the highest amount of deprivation, I would expect there to be a big lift in the outcomes for Māori in those areas.
Does it start with the individual? Does it start with us when we talk about shared success? So if you consider, your world and perhaps just your office, do you have shared success within there in terms of your advisors? Do you have a number of Māori advisors in your office?
We haven't finished our recruitment process. It's fair to say that I haven't finished hiring at the moment. It's fair to say that we're running a bit of a skeleton crew. We're focused on getting our 100-day plan in place. At the moment, we've transitioned with a number of staff who have come with us.
So once you have finished, if we were to have a ring around your offices, would we see shared success with, in the back rooms making the decisions in the Labour government?
Oh, look, I would hope across our ministry, across our the beehive. But for me, there are many measures. But for me, I'll be looking across those social wellbeings in particular. One area I've really focused on is reducing child poverty. So I'm just looking through advice at the moment on how we can make sure that, of course, we see a big benefit from Māori children from the policies we look at in that area.
Do you have a target yet? Do you have a number?
Well, what we're trying to put into law is something that no government would want to get rid of. So whilst at the moment my inclination is to enshrine the measures in law and require targets without embedding the targets themselves into law, so that we will be required to set them. They'll be publicly consulted. Everyone will have a say on them. They'll know what they are. But heaven forbid, of course, that we're voted out in the future, which is the life cycle of politics, that the next government will hold on to that principle as well. I want this to endure beyond us.
Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, thank you for your time this morning. It's 7:30.
And there's been a lot of feedback following our interview with Paul Goldsmith this morning, particularly his claim that people will enrol in first-year courses just to get an extra $50 a week with no intention of studying.